Welcome to our Gemara Shiur. We're not exactly doing Amud Yomi, but we are learning the Gemara, and we are improved quality. Baruch Hashem, no noise, right? Bezos Hashem. Thank you to everybody who came here, and to Torah Anytime and YouTube participants. Ketanoi, we are in Shabbos Daf Kuf Ches Amud Aleph, discussing the topic of how do you know that Bris Milah should be done in the place where Bris Milah is done. It doesn't say it first in the Torah. The Torah doesn't really tell us which body part should Bris Milah be done to. So let's see. Says the Gemara Ketanoi, really it's Machlokes Tanoi. Minayin lamila shebois makom. How do you know Milah is done to basically that place, the private parts of the men? Nemakan olosoi v'nema lalan olosoi. It says by Milah olosoi, yeah, and also when it comes to the ola of the fruit, the first 3 years in which the fruit are forbidden to be eaten, also olosoi, same word, gzerashova, malalan davosho sepri, afkan davosho sepri, divo biyoshia, as we said before. Yeah, it's Gzera Shava. Just like here, we're talking about making fruit, the tree is making fruit. So too, that part of the body is the kiyum of pru or vu, you're making fruit. Yeah, that's one way, and that's already the previous sugya. Abu Nassan says something else. Abu Nassan, we don't have to come out to the Gzera Shava. We have a local word within the same parsha that tells me that it's in the private part. It says, V'orel zocho right? In other words, it's telling you, Arel Zocho, when it talks about Bsar Orla, the flesh of the Orla, it says the word Zocho is mentioned in context. That seems to be redundant, yeah? Zochor. Why is he saying that it's for male? Malkum Shanika ben Zichus lenikvus. It's a place where we can tell the difference between Zochor and Nekeva, that body part, that's where you should do the Bris Milah. It says Orel Zocho. Okay? Tono Rabbanon, by the way, something interesting. I thought it's a kind of, I don't know if the idea is true or false, but the 3 questions that they asked Rav was, Rav was going to be the rabbi of the place, you know. So basically, they asked him 3 questions that have to do with 3 stages of life. Bris Milah. They asked him, how do you know Bris Milah is not Bris Milah? Second question about Tefilin. You start it when you become Bar Mitzvah. And the third one is Nida. So, right? Interesting. Get married. So the local rabbi, he should know about Bris Milah. Bar mitzvah and nida. What do you say? Maybe, yeah. Oh, the tzibur is maskim. Tono Rabbanon shkoyach. Tono Rabbanon with the last narrow line. Koisvin tefilin al gabi. Back to the previous subject. Koisvin tefilin al gabi or beima tehoiro. One should write tefillin only on the skin, which becomes parchment of the beima tehoiro. Beima tehoiro means kosher animal, cow, yeah, v'chule, goat. Val gabi or chaya tehoiro. Also in the or of the chaya tehoiro. Chayat or undomesticated animal, for example, deer, right? The deer, the heart, giraffe could be kosher. So the skin of those animals can be used as a parchment for stam. Valgabe or neveila trefus shaloin. Oh, so this is we said before. That's a chiddush. Even if the animal was neveila trefa, even though the animal died naturally or died by a guy, hitting on the head, or treifa, the animal was very, very sick. Bekitzer, those behemoths, the neveila wasn't shechted, right? The treifa may have been shechted, but also to eat. Yeah, it was terminally ill. And therefore, although they're treif to be eaten, you can still write on the or of those animals, as long as the species is kosher, the species is kosher, even if the particular animal is not, because it has its own personal problems, it wasn't shechted properly, or treifa, you can write the Sefer Torah from under skin, and we're going to learn why later. And v'nikrochos b'seoron. Oh, so what's nikrochos b'seoron? The first time, what does it do? Let's now talk about the 4 parshas of Tefillin. Each parsha of Tefillin, of the 4, I'm talking about the head, yeah? So each one is basically, you roll it, and then you tie it, you bind it, you tie it with hair of the animal, right? It's better, dafka, to do it with the hair of the cow to remind us of Chet HaEgel. Or maybe that's about the other thing. Yeah, it's a se'aron. So each one is tied with the se'ar, with the hair of the kosher animal, and placed in the compartment, one of the 4 compartments. Yeah, so that has to be also kosher animal. Let's say horse. The hair of the horse is very useful, actually. It's very good to work with. Some told me you can't use a horse one. You have to use a kosher one for that too, even for the binding, for the tying. V'nitparos begidan. Oh. That the tefer we all see, the tefer all around the titura, right, all around the black square, right? It's like stitched, right? You have those stitches. They are from the gidim. They are from the sinews. Only kosher animals can't use non-kosher. Even maybe neveila, when I say kosher, I mean kosher species, the kosher type. Now, okay, the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and it's halacha from Sinai, shatfilin kochas b'solim and post begidan. In other words, we're basically saying the same thing, but we're saying to Moshe Sinai the fact that the kricha with the hair and the tfira with the gid has to be done with the kosher animal is lochem Sinai. A lot of things with the tefillin. Remember daf kafches. We saw this in daf kafches. The fact that their tzuas have to be black is also lochem Sinai. Not written anywhere, not even hinted in the Torah. It's an oral Balpeh tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu, the Kodesh Baruch Hu, till today. All men wear tefillin, same thing, black, square. It's all lochem Sinai. Yeah, maybe because the goyim are not supposed to have it. It's very my own idea. They say one of the main reasons the Torah is so miserly with words, right? And doesn't elaborate. There's a lot of balpeh because goyim are not supposed to really chap the Torah. So tefillin, something very Jewish. Let them, stay out of here. Shabbos also. Shabbos is mentioned many times, but gazillion and half halachos, 39 ton meals in halachos, are not mentioned because goyim are not supposed to keep Shabbos. Goyish Shabbos chayv misa. So things to do with goyim, I'll give you the hint and let Tim McKenzie make his own mistakes and leave us alone. Now, so now, aval, we're in the second wide line. In other words, what is a species? You're not allowed to write tefillin or the other things, not allowed to write them on the skin of a non-kosher animal, whichever one, I don't know, horse, pig, whatever, not allowed to write neither behema nor chaya. A behema is pig, it's a domesticated animal. No horse, I don't know, chaya tmea, leopard, lion, whatever, any jungle animal can't write on their skin. Let alone, you can't write on those that are both neveila and treif. Interesting. It's a treif species, and also he wasn't shechted. He died naturally. It's a double chisoron, double trouble. So you're not allowed to write on them, needless to say. Any kochin b'soron, as I told you, you can't use the non-kosher hair, hair from the non-kosher animal to bind the little megillah, venit post begidan. Yeah, the black batim all around cannot be stitched with the gid of a behema tmeya. Now comes a very, very interesting hashkafic discussion. V'zu she'ela shol baitusi echadis of B'shua Garsi. A baitusi, he asked for B'shua Garsi. Baitusim, tzadaku baitos, by the way, the Rambam, I'm learning a Hilchas Tshuva because of Elul, tzadaku baitos, he says, are machti arabim, they never have tshuva. They started the first, reform movement. They basically, tzadukim baitusim, different ways of believing only Torah Shebaal Peh, not only Torah Shebechtav, not Torah Shebaal Peh. So this baitusi only believe Torah Shebechtav, not the Torah Shebaal Peh. So he has issues with tefillin, surprisingly, and he's asking, "Minayin shen koisvin tefillin al or beima tmeya." How do you know that you're not allowed to write tefillin on the skin of non-kosher species of animal? So Rabbi Yeshua answered, "Dechtiv leman tia Torah Hashem beficha midavar hamutar beficha." That's the source. It says Torah Hashem beficha. We mentioned this pasuk, and it says that about tefillin, and therefore Torah Hashem beficha, literally the Torah of Hashem, all the Torah text, tefillin, mezuzah, Torah, all the Torah that has to be halachically written, as opposed to a printed chumash, has to be mutar beficha. Beficha, you're supposed to only use the tefillin, the actual tefillin, from types of items that you can also eat. It has to be some connection, the ruchni and gashmi. So now the obvious question is, now that the tzduki, the Baitus has a good question. You see that he made it to the Gemara. His Baitus has a chus that the Gemara mentions him. It's interesting. Ela me'ata frek the Baitusi al gabe orne velus trefasali kosvu. Good. Akutekasha. If you tell me I'm supposed to only use kosher animals, so how can you use the skin of neveila v'treifa for tefillin? A good question. You're not allowed to eat neveila v'treifa b'shumayfen, right? You all lived in America. Chicken is a kosher type, but the chicken one they buy in the kosher supermarket, you don't begin to look at. No. So why are you allowed to write on it? You're not allowed to eat it. It doesn't follow. Amarlei. So now Rabbi Shua Garsi answers. I'll give you a mashal, to compare a mashal, an example to follow. Two people, all supposed to be executed. yeah, they are now subject to capital punishment. Oy, oy, oy. Echad olgoi melech, ve'echad olgoi ispekalito. One of them was killed by the king himself. Let's say they're both, I don't know, beheaded, let's say. Yeah, one of them was killed by the melech himself. The other one was killed by the speklito. Rashi says it's a saratabochim, the executor, executionist, the executor, yeah? So now, Ezemin Meshubach, which one got more covered? Well, even at death, there's covered. What will be remembered as more mechubad? If I remember, there's Shorog Melech. In a way, at least we know the king himself treated him as bad and as gruesome. Lamaisi got the Melech cared enough that he himself killed him, rather than giving the job to somebody lower. We think so differently, but that's Yemes, yeah, even the death, yeah. Kilu chashivus. So now, oh, what's the answer? The answer is, unbelievably, the behemoth that died naturally, as much as we call it treif neveila, died by Hashem. Hashem killed it. A cow died out of old age. Yeah, Bessie the cow has reached the ripe age of, I don't know how long they live for, I don't know, 15. And what? It died. So now the Melech Hashem killed it. It's better, wow, than the shechted animal that was killed by human beings. Psh, very different what we think. And the Maisa, therefore, Dafka the neveila that was killed by Hashem by natural death is more choshuv in a way, and that's why clearly you should write, yeah, on the skin of that behemoth. Now, the obvious question of the tzduki of the baitusi, frek the baitusi, the baitus, elamata yochlu. Yeah, you're saying something so logical, so let us eat them. If you're telling me that those who died naturally, yeah, are more choshuv because Hashem Himself killed them, so to speak. So then what? So let's eat them too. Amarle says Rabbi Shua Garsi, no. Listen, halacha is halacha. The Torah says not to eat them. A good svara, but the Torah said no. You're telling me we should eat them? The Torah says not to eat them, so we're not going to eat them. Omarle says the Baitusi kalus. Kalus means meshubach tam zeh. This reason is a very good reason. He really liked this pshat. So basically, very interesting. So the Torah says there's gzer sekosuv not to eat neveila treifus. But when you go to our own svara, the neveila treifus have a certain advantage. They were killed by the Eibishter. They got personal treatment. Yeah, mitzad right? So therefore, for tefillin, they're at least as good as the kosher animal. Very interesting. Tosfos asks the question. Let's look at Tosfos Ezmen Choshuv. That's a very good question. The second to last Tosfos. The second to last Tosfos Ezmen Choshuv Osher Shogam Melech. Frank Tosfos Vim Toimar Tenach Meisum Elein Nechus VaKos Michael Amema. There are two types of neveilas. What's a neveila? He died naturally. Bessie the cow reached a very ripe age, went to the old age home, eventually died, the cow. And then what? That's one type. Nechus v'akuros means what? The goyim either cut it from the nose, or they cut it by pulling out the part of the, whatever, the pipes. The kitzer, if they were killed by goyim, they were killed by human being. Michael Meimar. Your logic, they were killed by Hashem, the choshuv, that's good for those who died naturally. But those who died unnaturally, yeah, because the guy hit them on the head, or today with electric shock, what will we say? They were killed by human beings in their treif. So how come you can write tefillin on them? They don't have the advantage of being killed by Hashem directly. Huh? The Shloimeh answers Tosfos. Once we see the concept that those who died naturally are allowed, and it makes sense to us because they died by Hashem, im ken menumutar beficha lav davka ela mimina mutar beficha kama. Very good. The concept doesn't always apply, but we're not scared of that. Once we know that those who died naturally are good, right? Mainly we interpret the pasuk not as those that you can eat, but the species, the types you can eat. Mainly, even those who were killed by the Goyish Shoichet, or by the Arab Shoichet, or by the American, the guy who hit it on the head, it doesn't apply to them. It doesn't make a difference anymore. Because we see already there's no maila to dafka mutar b'ficha. We already don't interpret the words mutar b'ficha as real kosher mahadrin. Once we don't interpret it as kosher, Mimele opens the door to all kinds of treifas, whether killed by Hashem or killed by human beings. It's like once you open the door, the dam is open. That's it. We change the concept. Okay. That new Mishnah, we'll talk about one topic, and we're preparing you This topic will lead to the other one. Topic number one, introductions are important. I've learned that in my short life. First of all, one of the Lametes Malachas, which we saw in the Mishnah and in Gimel, later on we saw it in Daf Nemud Beis. The topic is me'abed. What's me'abed? So in English, a guy told me today, he's right, tanning. What does it mean? You take you take skin and you make it into leather. So tanning is a nice translation, but we all know an Av has, what's the essence of the Av? What does Hashem not want us to do? The broader picture of the Malacha of the Av. What is it? Preserving. When you have skin, it's going to go bad and, stink. What we want to do, right, is what the tanner does, the borsiki, what does he do? He strengthens it, he does whatever he does in order to preserve it and make it long-lasting. That's the Yisur of Me'abed. We saw in the Gemara in Daf Nemud Beis in the top, if I'm not mistaken, I think in Nemud Beis, that when you do Me'abed for food, there's no Me'abed by food, which means pickling. Let's say Mamish take on Shabbos, the cucumbers. My mother used to do it, not on Shabbos, And you take cucumbers, you put them in brine. There's a special, like a glass kli, and you close it, tie it, a special kli, and you put it in the brine for a long time. That's preserving. And it changes the whole tsura, and it stays for a long time. Those cucumbers can stay there for a long time, and they became different. You change the texture, right? And by that, it's long-lasting and preserved. So although the Gemara did say that ein ibud be'oichlin, midoraisa ibud does not apply to oichlin. Not all malachos apply to oichlin. Oichlin are not so important. Oichlin are very temporary. There's no tzvia boichlin. It's a discussion, but in most cases, there's no coloring by food, most cases. And mechatich boichlin, right? Mechatich to cut by size. There's a question about binyan. There is lom shaneh. There are questions. Not everything. Makim bepatish. Yolocha says, according to some people, that makim bepatish does not apply to food for sure. I think the Minchas Chinuch. But Kitzer, ibud does not apply to oichlin. Why am I saying this to you? Because now you're going to see, you're about to see that the ibud does apply to oichlin. So I'm telling you now, that's the Rabbana. In the Raisa level, ibud does not apply to oichlin. But the Rabbanan, it is, you start, preserving your cucumbers, making them into pickles, right? The Maisa, tomorrow, you're going to do the same for the leather. So that's why it's also. Also the Rabbanan. Classically, so the Rabbanan to be ma'abed oichlin. Okay? Now, ibud oichlin has a higher, or now more fine-tuned, as we all know, when you prepare a salad on Shabbos, you can't just do whatever you want. There are many, many prerequisites to preparing vegetables, a nice Israeli or American vegetable salad. You make it on Shabbos. I'm not going to questions of toichen and boiler. There's an issue of you don't put the salt right away on the vegetables. You have to put the oil first. You don't put the salt. Because salting vegetables on Shabbos is a big issue. I checked it again today in the Mishnah Berurah. I'm not saying it's all usher, but there are issues there. Because when you put, and actually tested it once, let's say if you cut cucumbers or tomatoes, whatever, on the plate, and you salt them, it changes. Those with the salt, those without the salt, after a few minutes, they look different, not just the taste. Yeah. Try it at home. Try it, you love it. So basically, when you have the salt on the vegetables, it's a darabanon of me'abed, sometimes. This is just a general introduction. Not halacha here. This is just the topic now. Our parak will deal with, somehow, you'll see soon, from the topic of me'abed, we'll come to another topic. We'll kind of tangentially jump to another topic of medication on Shabbos. Medication on Shabbos is also osur. You're not allowed, of course, there are exceptions. I'm not talking enough from the Mishka, but generally speaking, a person who can function is a headache. Some annoying headache. He doesn't have to lie down. He can walk around to shul and do stuff. But he has a headache, and he can use American Tylenol, whatever, Acamol, whatever it is, Optalgin. Are you allowed to take it on Shabbos? Generally speaking, no. Why? Because if you take the medications that are always, you grind them. Well, you don't. They do it in the factory, but because naturally, classically, medications are being ground, there's the chashash. You'll come to be toichen. You'll come to grind whichever ingredients. Today, the more into natural medicines, natural herbs, right? Your herbalist will tell you, you need to grind some fresh whatever in order to take the medication. That's the chashash, and that's why Chazal answered and forbade medication on Shabbos, generally speaking. we're going to touch on that a lot. This is actually one of the main topics of this parak. But for now, let's talk about what? About the me'abed. Let's see. Says the Mishnah, "En oisin hilmi b'Shabbos." If you happen not to know what hilmi is, you're in good company. I'll spoil it for you. Hilmi means, funnily enough, a large amount of salt water. Large amount of salt water. That's what hilmi means. Not small and not honey. Large and salt. You're not allowed to make a large amount of salt water. The traditional Seder night, right? It makes one of the differences between Seder night, Shabbos, and otherwise is the salt water. You have to prepare it before Shabbos. You're not allowed to make salt water on Shabbos. If it's a big amount, you're not allowed to. Why? Because normally salt water are used in order to salt vegetables in them, or pour them on the vegetables, or whatever you want to salt, or the fish, right? Fish are always herring, a huge, right, a huge branch of business. Basically, the big amount of salt water looks like, so the ritva, like you're doing it for a long time, for Yom Chol. It looks like you're about to now, uvda the chol, you're preparing now a big amount of salt water in order, normally, even if that's not your kavana, some Rishonim say, even if kavana is not in order to pickle in them, but it looks as if you're going to have some kind of large, production of pickling, and that's also why you make such a big amount. It looks like you're doing it for the weekdays, even worse. Looks like you're preparing it for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's why it's not allowed. Now, continues the Mishnah. However, you are allowed to make me'melach. What does mean allowed to? Meaning a small amount. A small amount of me'melach is allowed. Why? The Bartanura explains, because those me'melach, you're doing it right now, small amount, and you're going to use them now for permitted purposes, right? It's small, and everybody understands small amount of me'melach are very accepted to dip your bread in. You want to dip your bread in that? That's okay. Bread, there's no chashash, yeah? You bread, even vegetables would be okay, by the way. Vegetables, you're not allowed to pour salt on them if they're 3 or 4 pieces together and they stay on the plate. But if it's one piece and you salt it one by one, it's okay. Halacha. Yeah, let's say, so if I'm table my bread in the salt water, that's fine. And as long as the amount is small, doesn't look I'm doing anything fishy. So that's okay. But no, let's say take the salt water to pour into the tafshil. I assume there's no bishul, maybe it's klisheni, shlishi, whatever. Yeah, into the tafshil is no problem. It's mixed now with something cooked. It's not preserving, it's not pickling, and that's why it's okay. As long as the amount is small, doesn't even look like I'm doing some whole production here of pickles, and that's why it's okay. Omar Rabbi Yossi argues and says, Valu hilmi ben meruba ben muat. Rabbi Yossi says it's all the same. Whether it's a lot or little, but regardless of the amount, it's considered as hilmi. Hilmi are osir. The truth is, the Gemara says the Gemara doesn't know whether Rabbi Yossi forbids them both or allows them both. Rabbi Yossi says, I don't differentiate between a big amount and a small amount. I don't accept that. Does he allow them both? Does he forbid them both? That's going to be the Gemara's question. And continues Rabbi Yossi and says, the Elu and Mei Melech Mutarin. You know which Mei Melech are allowed? You know which Mei Melech do allow? Nois and Shemen Lechatchila Lo Tochamayim Ola Soicha Melech. Says Rabbi Yossi, I have a trick to always, not always, to allow, to make Mei Melech in a permissible way. You have a go-between. You have two sides fighting. Get the mediator. In other words, if you put salt with oil and then water, then it's okay. Or oil and water, even if they don't mix so well, but they're somehow together, and then the salt, it's okay. As long as the salt and the water didn't hit it together, as long as the oil was brought in between, then it's okay. Why? Because the oil, lemaisa, is meitish koichoi. It takes the mei melach, it takes away the power, the potency of the salt. Oil is the opposite of salt, and oil is something that ki'ilu mitigates the charifus, the pickling ability of the salt, the oil. The Ma'aser Tosfos says, I don't have koich not to go into Tosfos. Tosfos says the other mashkin as well. We had the shaila today with the chavrusa. Yeah, not only oil that's like slimy. Even let's say orange juice, wine. If you mix it in between, it mitigates the only salt and mime together That really does the trick. That creates already an ibud. Already at that point, I don't know, the Rashi says, the Mishnah Berurah says, Nira ke'ma'abed. Already now it looks like you're ma'abed. Now you have the strong salt water, just salt and just water. They are the lethal, they are the dangerous ones. They are the ibud team. Once you have oil in between, then it's okay. Halacha l'maisa, my friends, that's how women, Jewish women, make salad. Ask your wives, they know. How do you make salad? You put the vegetables, of course, you cut them not too small, only big, right? And you put the oil first, and only then the salt. Not salt. Once you put the salt, you're over an Isser. The oil is too late afterwards. You have to put the oil and then the salt. Yeah. So that's basically the Mishnah. The Gemara is asking a question, Maika Omar, what is Rabbi Yossi telling me? All Rabbi Yossi, no, excuse me, no, mistake, I'm jumping the gun. I already told you what's heal me. The Gemara doesn't know what's heal me. Mike, what's heal me? Heal me? You look up the dictionary. Amar Bira Amar Shmuel Hachi Kama. Ein osin memelach merubin. Heal me means, as I told you, big amount, large amount of memelach. It looks like you're preparing a week of pickling on Shabbos. As long as you keep the small amount that looks like like salatim, the beginning of the meal, right? Memelach, like your tchina, your hummus, memelach in a small amount. It's meant for dipping. It's meant for something small. That's no problem. Of course, you can't now sink the tomato into it and let it stay there, because that would be a real ibud rabbanon. But the memach themselves, it doesn't look like I'm about to start a whole big business here of me'abed. Omar Rabbi Yossi. Oh, now let's learn Rabbi Yossi. Omar Rabbi Yossi, v'alo hilmi ben merubin ben mu'atin. Rabbi Yossi says, listen, I don't like your paraphrasing. Lamaisa, hilmi is hilmi, and it's what? I don't know if it's allowed or not allowed, but whether merube or muat, I don't see the difference between a large amount or a small amount. Iboilahu, now comes the question by the Maroim, Rabbi Yossi, lesa or lehatir? When somebody tells you this is mutter, the other one is osir, and another person tells you they're both the same. What does it mean? They're both mutter or both osir? Omar Rav Yehuda lehatir. Rabbi Yehuda says that really Rabbi Yossi meant to allow both of them. Why? It doesn't say Rabbi Yossi forbids. If Rabbi Yossi wanted to forbid it, he would have said also, since it says they're both the same, without saying osur, your problem means they're both mutter. The Ritva will explain more. Omerlei, now comes the big question on Rabbi Yehuda. Omerlei Rabba, says Rabba, what do you mean? Read the Mishnah. What did Rabbi Yossi say at the end of the Mishnah? I also hinted to you the way I read it. The Eluhen Me'melcha. What did he say? This is the salt water that's allowed. What did Rabbi Yossi say? They're both the same, and this is the permitted one, the one with the oil. Mashma, the without the oil, the both osir, big or small. So how can you tell me, Rav Yehuda, that really Rabbi Yossi and the Mishnah meant to permit them both? He says these are the mutar, the ones with the oil. Mashma that the ones without the oil are both osir. How can Rabbi Yehuda make such a mistake? How can Rabbi Yehuda really learn the Mishnah otherwise? The Ritva says something, right? Let's read the Mishnah again. Omar Yossi, Hilmi ben Muba ben what? These are the mutar, right? So it's clear. Says the Ritva, no. Yeah, it's not clear that he meant that both are osir. Because many times the Tanoim, they're playing devil's advocate. What do? They say, Leshitosi, really, I will tell you that they're all allowed. You guys think that right? I really think that both allowed, right? You who answer everything, according to you, even if it was in your shoes, with your mindset, and I would say that memelech are not allowed, I would still allow the one with the oil. Get it? Maybe spoke lefi their das at the seifa, but not by his own das. That was what Rav Yehuda thought. But the other Moraim rejected. The other Moraim said, listen, read the Mishnah Kepashtusa. The pashtus of the Mishnah is what? That it's both osir. He says the only one that's mutar is with the oil. And from now on, we'll see that according to Rabbi Yossi, everyone says, Rabbi Yochanan, another Moira says, he basically meant to forbid it. Tanenami another Braisa, En oisin memelech merubin loses letoch kvoshin shebetoch gistera. One is not allowed to make a lot of mei melach in order to put into the kvoshin when your mind is, or it looks like you're putting it into the kvoshim. Kvoshim are the pickled tomatoes, cucumbers. In the gistera, gistera we saw in Daf Tzadiyah is a broken kli. When you have a broken kli, gistera is half a kli. Broken kalim would be very good for pickling. You put it in the side. Nobody really uses them. It's all dirty. Basically in the gistera, that's where you have the pickles. And if you put hot water with the salt water with the large amount over there, that's not allowed because it's keilu you starting the ibud process. You're already beginning to do the ibud.
I thought the word gistra meant like accounting. It's like there's in Rosh Hashanah it talks.
Gistra kli shavur shel cheres, says Rashi right over here, and also in Daf Tzadiyah. Maybe there's other meanings. I'm not arguing. Gistra is gistre, two sides. Gis is a side like it has two sides because it's broken. Both sides kilo are broken. Maybe there are other meanings. I'm not saying no. Yeah, I mean gistra shel melech. There is such a word. You're right. Aval oisu me melech mu'otin. However, one is allowed to make a small amount of salt water. If your kavanah is kosher, you really want to use it for bread or to put it as a sauce in the tavshil in your cholent, as long as there's no bishul issues, that's okay. That's the nakama. Because that's a lot and that's little, that makes it okay because it's a small amount. Listen to Rabbi Yossi Svara. Now he's going to hit it on the hand. You know what people will think? People will think, maybe to make a small amount is okay. They'll kosherize a small amount of ibud, and that's bad. That's his concern. You hear what he's saying? He's saying you really prepared for your salad, but your Shabbos guest doesn't know. He thinks you have your salt water in a small amount to pickle inside small amount of radishes. That's also that's why he's concerned. Chachamim say that once it's a small amount, it's self-explanatory that it's not for ibud. Rabbi says no, it's not self-explanatory. Maybe people mistakenly think that really you're allowed to salt and really me'abed small amounts. Bad. Ella, therefore says Rabbi Yossi, elu ve'elu asurin. Whether it's large amount or small amount, they're both asur, says Rabbi Yossi. Hen. Ve'elu melech mutorin. No. So when can I make salt water if I want to use it just for fun? That's in shemen u'melach. First, you put the oil and the salt together without water, or shemen u'mayim, or oil and water together, and also only later the salt. Never have to have the salt and the water together. Like in physics, that's a Lido formula. Even if later you add the oil, too late. Maim and melech together, it's marisain or mamish. That's the way you prepare. You start the setting up preparation of ibud. And that's why it's also not the Raisa. The Rabbanon, it's like the beginning of the process of ibud. So even though you didn't put the vegetables inside, already at that early stage, we nip it at the bud. Right? Already the chatchila, if you put oil, that's okay. Because the oil really is machlish. The oil really doesn't allow it to pickle as well. So that's why it's okay. Now, Tani Rabbi Yehuda B'Chaviva, more about pickling and me'abed, says Rabbi Yehuda B'Chaviva, en oisin memelach azin. One is not allowed to prepare memelach, salt water that are strong. My melach azin, can you please define strong? Soon we'll see how it relates to the Mishnah. We'll read the Gemara, then I'll connect it to the Mishnah. They both say, wow, there's so much salt that the egg would float above. Yeah, I don't know what kind of egg, maybe not cooked. Yeah, basically, like we know like the Gemara said later on, in the Dead Sea, which is really called Yam HaMelach, yeah, people float on top because that's the salt makes it somehow that people can float on top. So too, the egg can float on top. Vikama, what's the ratio between the salt and the water for the azim? That's very salty. 2/3 of salt and 1/3 of water, that's very, very salty. It's ratio of 2/1 in favor of the salt. And that's considered as what? Mei melech azin. Now, let me ask you a question. How does that fit into the Mishnah? The Mishnah said you are allowed to make a small amount of mei melech, not allowed to make a big amount, right? That's the Nakama. So what's the azin business? Small or big? The Rishonim say even a small amount. That's a chiddush. Even if you make a small amount, like a small little amount, which looks like your salad bowl, a little one, it's normally okay. But if it's so crazily salty, 2/1, Such memelach, you don't dip your thing, right? That looks like that's too good for a regular meal. It looks industrial. It looks like you're zikr about to put there the pickles or the herring. That is too much salt that even a small amount would be already forbidden. My avdilo, really, why do people make such a super salty water? Muraisa is the chir shel dogim. In order to pickle the fish, pickling the fish, I guess, needs a lot of salt, and therefore that is an issue. Tani Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva en moilchin tznonu beitza b'Shabbos. Whether it's radish or egg, you're not allowed to salt them on Shabbos. By the way, guys, look, we just moved from salting water into salting vegetables. Now, moilchin, I prepared you before. We're not talking here about a guy who takes the tznon and beitza, boom, into this, this vacuum. It was like closed by vacuum, and he's salting it for a week. We're talking about a guy who sits nice at the Shabbos table with a shtreimel in his head, and he puts a tznon in the salt. Yeah, in other words, or he even has pieces of tznon on the plate, and he basically takes the salt shaker and starts putting salt on the tznon or on the egg, and it stays there for a long time. How much is long time is the question, but it's there, even not for a long time. Even for that same meal, he takes 4 or 5 pieces together, 3 or 4 pieces, says Mishnah Berurah. You take like a small plate with a few pieces, and you put salt on them. That's not allowed. Why? Because it's a shtikel ibud, the rabbanon. Whether it's tznon or beitza. However, Rav Chizkiya Mishmei Dabai Omar, tznon osu ubeitza muteres. Tznon is not allowed, the radish is not allowed, and the egg is allowed. I opened the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is not just halacha sefer; it's a very good, Peirush on Chas, because he explains everything. The Mishnah brings 2 reasons why an egg, you are allowed to salt the egg on Shabbos. He says, first of all, it's less normal to do it. It's less normal to pickle eggs. I saw many times pickled tomatoes, cucumbers, and fish. Pickled eggs, maybe I saw once. It's much, much less common, even today, with all the crazy food. So it doesn't look like it's the wrong thing. It's not so mekubal, it does. Secondly, he says it really doesn't help the egg so much. It doesn't change the texture of the egg as much as it does for the vegetables. So the effect, mitzias, physically is not as much. That's why really the beitza is allowed. So we say. We have to finish here. I'm sorry. Okay. We're holding Bamuteres. Because we're in our kind of rebelled against the Amud, I would continue here on Sunday. Okay, you can chazer. The whole Friday Shabbos, do 100 chazoras. Yeah. And what? And we're holding here in the middle of Kuf Chesed Beis. Yeah, that's it. So we go through properly. Yeah.
Fair.
You okay? Thank you very much. I really like this format of Shir much, much better. I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. Everybody on Torah time as well. Thank you very, very, very much.